Less than a month after Italy threw her hat into the Axis ring, declaring war on Britain and France, the Italians faced the bitter taste of defeat. During the Battle of Taranto, the Regia Marina was eviscerated by an unprecedented aerial assault, leaving 3 battleships crippled and 3 other warships badly mauled. Mussolini, seething and hungry for revenge, vowed to show the British who ruled the Mediterranean. He made a bold decision: deploy 2 of Italy's most capable and modern battleships, Vittorio, Veneto, and Giulio, Cesare, to hunt down the British aircraft carriers, HMS Ark Royal and Argus, along with their cruiser escorts. However, British intelligence had their finger on the pulse, detecting the Italian strike. The British carriers were ordered to retreat, and the Italian Navy, buoyed by a newfound sense of pride, believed they were finally gaining ground in the Mediterranean. On November 27th, another British convoy made a dash for Malta, and the Italian capital ships were dispatched again to intercept. This time, though, the Royal Navy was ready. They knew exactly what was coming, and the Italians were steaming headlong into a carefully laid trap. The stage was set for the blistering Battle of Cape Spartivento. As World War II loomed, the Italians knew they had one of the most powerful naval forces in the world. It wasn't as omnipresent as the Royal Navy, but with British ships spread thin across the globe, Italy had a real shot at claiming the Mediterranean. This confidence in their powerful navy morphed into overconfidence as they adopted a fleet-in-being strategy. They believed their overwhelming fleet alone was enough to make the British think twice before conducting major maritime operations. Why take the ships out of port when the mere presence of the Regia Marina could impose a strategic check on the British? By remaining a constant threat, even without direct combat, the fleet forced the enemy to allocate resources and maintain vigilance, thus limiting their operational freedom. Italy had taken a page from the Germans, who had successfully projected the power of their limited navy to the absolute limit. A prime example was the battleship Tirpitz, which threatened Allied shipping and naval operations in the North Atlantic, despite rarely engaging in direct combat. But the British called their bluff. Just 1 month after Italy entered the war, the Royal Navy struck at the heart of the Italian Navy in their own ports, where the Italians thought they were untouchable. On the night of November 11th, 1940, the Royal Navy's Fleet Air Arm launched an extraordinary airstrike against the Italian fleet, moored in Taranto. The carrier Illustrious unleashed a wave of swordfish biplanes, slashing across the night sky as darkness descended upon the Mediterranean. Torpedo assaults and dive bombings began in earnest. Italian warships were rocked by thunderous explosions as torpedoes sliced into the sea, leaving trails of froth. Both the Vittorio and the Conte di Cavour were engulfed in blasts, their steel hulls groaning under the relentless barrage. The sky was alight with a ballet of tracer bullets and anti-aircraft fire. With steely determination, the swordfish pilots released their payloads with precision, their biplanes trembling under the relentless bombardment. As the bombs detonated, columns of water erupted, adding to the cacophony of destruction. Amidst the inferno, the Italian fleet was decimated and left crippled. Mussolini's pride was shattered. With the concept of fleet in being cast into doubt, and with the Regia Marina desperate for a victory in the Mediterranean, 6 days after the devastating blow at Taranto, on the night of November 17th, an Italian task force comprising the battleships Vittorio, Veneto, and Giulio, Cesare, along with several support vessels, set out to intercept 2 British aircraft carriers, HMS Ark Royal and Argus, and their cruiser escorts. These British ships were on a mission to deliver aircraft to bolster Malta's defenses in what was codenamed Operation White. Alerted to the Italian approach, the British immediately reversed course and returned to Gibraltar, prematurely launching their aircraft, 2 Blackburn Skuas and 12 Hawker Hurricanes. Tragically, 1 Skua and 8 Hurricanes were lost at sea, running out of fuel well before reaching Malta, resulting in the loss of 7 airmen. The Italian success in thwarting the reinforcements of Malta cast serious doubt on British plans for Operation Collar, a second attempt to send a convoy to the island. Despite the setback, the British tried again, with increased support from Gibraltar-based Force H and Force D from Alexandria. The Mediterranean fleet surged forth from Alexandria, spearheading D-Force with the venerable battleship Ramillies leading the charge. Accompanied by the heavy cruiser Berwick, light cruiser Newcastle, Coventry, and a considerable escort of destroyers Defender, Gallant, Greyhound, Griffin, and Hereward, the fleet cut through the waves with purpose. Meanwhile, across the Mediterranean, Admiral James Somerville's Force H departed Gibraltar. At its core were the battlecruiser Renown and the aircraft carrier Ark Royal, carrying 4 squadrons. Flanking them were the nimble light cruisers Sheffield and Dispatch and a fleet of destroyers: Faulkner, Firedrake, Forester, Fury, Encounter, Duncan, Wishart, Kelvin, and Jaguar. In tandem, Force F, with the light cruisers Southampton and Manchester, accompanied by destroyer Hotspur, joined the formation. As these forces converged, Italian intelligence was quick to detect the convoy, spurring the Italian fleet into action. The Italian Super Marina wasted no time. Admiral Inigo Campione's first fleet, led by the battleships Vittorio, Veneto, and Giulio, Cesare, powered through the waves, their decks bristling with anticipation. They were escorted by destroyers Freccia, Saeta, Dardo, 13th Granatiere, Fusiliere, Bersagliere, and Alpino, ready to strike. Not far behind, Admiral Angelo Iachino's second fleet surged forward, bringing 3 heavy cruisers and their destroyer escort into the fray. 3 more cruisers from the 3rd Division, Trieste, Trento, and Bolzano, joined the battle group, protected by the destroyers Lancieri, Ascari, and Carabinieri. Positioning themselves near Sardinia, the Italian fleet aimed to capitalize on the Royal Air Force's coverage. Overhead, the Sardinian Air Command deployed 28 agile Fiat CR-32 fighters. In quick succession, 3 groups launched their Savoia Marchetti SM-79 bombers. Meanwhile, 2 other groups scouted ahead with Kant Z-506 seaplanes, complemented by the vigilant eyes of the Imam RO-37 aircraft. The skies buzzed with the activity of surveillance and air support units, setting the stage for a monumental clash. Comparing the naval forces, the Italians had the more modern fleet, but the Royal Navy had the most experienced and efficient crew. The first Italian naval unit to make visual contact with the convoy was the torpedo boat Sirio on the night of November 26th. Sirio launched 2 torpedoes from long range, which missed their target, but reported 7 enemy warships heading east. A fierce naval clash was about to take place. At 9:56 a.m., Admiral James Somerville received a critical report from his aircraft on the carrier HMS Ark Royal. 5 cruisers and 5 destroyers, assumed to be Italian, were closing in for battle. The British initially faced a dire situation, outgunned with Force D still en route from Alexandria. Under those circumstances, they'd be fighting an uphill battle, no matter the experience of the British sailors. Just 15 minutes later, the tables turned as Force D was spotted on the horizon, evening the odds. Armed with longer range and larger guns, the Italian ships faced the British advantage of an aircraft carrier, which had already proven its might at Taranto. Yet, Italian Admiral Inigo Campione, bound by orders to avoid combat unless overwhelmingly favorable, made a decisive battle uncertain. It was an uneven clash. On the one hand, the Italians had faster, more powerful ships, but on the other, the British had experience on their side and a much more numerous and powerful air fleet at their disposal. Admiral Somerville swiftly divided his forces into 2 groups. Rear Admiral Lancelot Holland led 5 cruisers in a vanguard formation, while 2 battleships and 7 destroyers followed to the south. Further south, the Ark Royal was bustling with activity, preparing to launch its lethal Fairey Swordfish biplanes. Meanwhile, the Italians organized their fleet into 3 groups, 2 composed of 6 heavy cruisers and 7 destroyers each, and a third trailing behind with 2 battleships and another 7 destroyers. At 12:07 p.m., a report from the cruiser Gorizia's floatplane reached Campione, revealing the near parity between the 2 forces. Following his orders, Campione commanded the cruiser groups to regroup with the battleships and prepare to withdraw. They did not have an overwhelming upper hand. However, the lead cruiser formation had already veered toward the British by this point, initiating a fierce engagement. The battle began explosively as steel clashed and fire blazed, echoing thunderously across the sea. At 12:22 p.m., the lead groups of both cruiser forces came into range, and the Italian cruiser Fiume unleashed its first salvo from 23,500 meters. Plumes of rushing water rose to the sky as the artillery shells fell short of their marks. As the distance between the fleets rapidly closed, the exchange of fire intensified, with the Italians beginning to exert serious pressure on the outgunned British. With a wider range and more firepower, the Italians sought to corner the British vessels to deliver a killing blow. The arrival of the battleship HMS Ramillies initially offered some relief, her guns roaring as she fired a few salvos at 12:26. However, her sluggish speed soon forced her out of formation, leaving the British vulnerable once more as the fast Italian ships cut through the waves with alarming ease. Against all odds, the Italian fleet was actually gaining an advantage in the battle, with its battleships harassing the British forces and blindsiding the slower vessels. That made it even more frustrating when Vice Admiral Angelo Iachino, commanding the Italian cruiser group, received orders to disengage despite their advantage. Iachino ordered his ships to increase speed to 30 knots, lay smoke, and commence withdrawal. Iachino's fleet, once poised to secure a stunning victory, now found themselves shrouded in smoke and retreating, the momentum slipping away. Amid the chaos, the Italian destroyer Lancieri took a devastating broadside shot from HMS Manchester, sustaining serious damage, though she was eventually towed to port. Yet, the Italians were not about to leave without returning the favor. A 203mm shell tore into the British heavy cruiser HMS Berwick, shattering her Y turret in a spectacular explosion. The blast claimed the lives of 7 sailors, injured 9 others, and ignited a fierce fire that blazed for an hour. The second shell hit at 12:35 p.m., obliterating the aft breaker room and cutting power to the ship's aft section, including the remaining turret. The first hit was believed to come from an Italian heavy cruiser of the 1st Cruiser Division, either Fiume or Pola, while the second likely came from Trieste or Trento of the 3rd Cruiser Division. At around 12:40 p.m., 11 swordfish torpedo bombers from Ark Royal launched a daring attack on Vittorio Veneto, but failed to score any hits as the massive battleship pivoted rapidly to avoid contact. For a brief moment, the tide seemed to turn in favor of the British, as the battlecruiser HMS Renown closed in on the Italian cruisers, her guns straddling Trieste with 2 devastating salvos, causing splinter damage. This fleeting advantage dissipated at 1 p.m. when Vittorio Veneto opened fire from 27,000 meters, sending 19 rounds and 7 salvos toward the British cruisers. As giant waterspouts erupted around Berwick and Manchester, the British realized they were outgunned. Rear Admiral Lancelot Holland ordered smoke, and his ships fled southeast to regroup with Renown. The British managed to withdraw despite the damage. Both forces pulled back, concluding the 54-minute battle with minimal damage to either side. The battle disappointed both sides. Italian admirals regretted not having pushed their advantage at a moment when they could have claimed a major victory in the Mediterranean. Despite carrying out orders, Campione was deemed responsible for squandering Italy's prime chance to counter the British fleet's devastating defeat. He was nearing the end of his time as a naval commander. The top brass in Britain was equally irritated. Since Somerville's objections to fighting the French at Mers el-Kabir, Winston Churchill had doubts about his aggressive spirit and wanted him removed. An investigation panel that had the support of many admirals cleared Somerville.